Hi, I'm Andy Schmuckler. I'm happy to continue what I started. If you heard it, how I got disillusioned with American academia. I started with a story of what happened to me at Yale as a graduate student in American Studies, and basically all the uh, what was revealed to me about academia that was so different from the idealized picture that I'd grown up with, because my dad was an academic and he glowed in my eyes and his world glowed in my eyes. And he was a man of great integrity. And, I just, in that story, I talk about uh, really a profound lack of integrity that I encountered in a graduate program at Yale. And I think it turns out to be much more representative of that world than my idealized dad-like image that I had as a kid. So the thing that happened uh, is that I left Yale, went across the continent. I'm got to turn something off here. I'm sorry about that. I'm such an amateur at this stuff. Went back across the country to Berkeley, and where Berkeley and the Graduate Theological Union uh, basically gave me the rope to hang myself. I had made this promise that this is what I'm going to do. Whether I get a degree or not, this is what I'm going to do, was my promise. And so they gave me the rope to hang myself. And I ended up pulling it off. I mean, everybody agreed that I had pulled it off. There's a story. It was not easy getting to the PhD uh, this way, but it succeeded. Um, and I could probably tell stories about what it was like trying to recruit my committee. Like the historian that says, "No, I can't serve on your committee." If you had this is. You should talk to people in anthropology. And then, would you believe I found the best, most likely anthropologist, and I try to recruit him, and he says, "Oh, well, this isn't anthropology. You really should be talking to the historians." I had a theory of history of social evolution. It had to do it incorporated anthropology, it incorporated history, but I have my adventures from them. But let's move ahead, and I complete the work. The thing that Yale wouldn't let me get a degree for doing, I did. It was 1,600 pages. I handed it in. I gave it to my committee, 5 people, people from Berkeley, people from Stanford, people from the Graduate Theological Union, people from a social scientific think tank. And they look at it and they say, this is a big enough deal that instead of making you defend your dissertation, we want you to deliver a public lecture in Berkeley. Again, I'm not trying to brag. I just want you to get a picture of, the career of this guy that had my father teaching him from the beginning. I developed into something that was not nothing in the values that I thought academia was about. So I get my degree. Everybody on my committee writes me a letter of reference. So when I apply, if and when I apply for jobs in academia, they would get these letters. Eventually, I saw the letters, and um, I've always had pretty strong letters, so I knew that that's what people were seeing, and I reached a point a couple years later where the world wasn't, in general. I was trying to get the Parable of the Tribes in a 1,600-page version published, and I was sending it off to the publishers I thought should publish it, thinking that this would, somebody would look at it and say, "Hey, this is a big deal." And anyway, that wasn't happening. I was really nowhere. I had a PhD. The committee had said it was a big deal, but I was nowhere. A, I had a child, and then I had two children, and I had no position. I had no salary. I had no money coming in. I mean, I as bad as I've been at making money, I've been very good at managing and using it. And so I've survived, but not without a struggle. But anyway, that's getting ahead of the story. The fact is, I reached a point where I thought, okay, this didn't work out the way I thought it would. I got this thing written. The world is not jumping at it. I got to get a job. So I apply for, I start going in to look at the Chronicle for Higher Education for what kind of faculty positions are open. And I apply for jobs. Not necessarily all jobs I really would have wanted, but I got myself into a place where there are a fair number that I was excited about seeing what I could do with. I remember one at Colorado Springs, Colorado College, I guess it was, teaching, asking you to design a course on international relations. And I really would have liked to have gotten that. Anyway, I didn't get that one. I didn't get any of them. I applied for like 70 positions, and I got turned down in each. No, I'm not turned down. I mean, I just didn't get the interviews. I knew what the letters looked like. I knew what my academic record was. I knew the various fellowships and honors and such that were listed there. And I knew, what people said about the work that I had done and about me personally. I mean, I'm not a bad guy. It's not like, not everybody likes me, but, basically I get decent reviews as a human being. So, and I wasn't even getting invited to interviews. From this point, we can go in. There are two stories, in a sense that one is the experience I had with Harvard, and then the one later with the Princeton guy who explained what my experience meant. So, starting with the Harvard thing. So I'm looking for positions that somebody might hire me to, I can support a family. I mean, I live in America. I got to support my family. And I see an ad from Harvard for a position. And I knew the position. There's an honors program at Harvard called Social Studies. I don't know if it's changed in the last whatever, since I was briefly a major in that. I ended up graduating in social relations, which is an interesting interdisciplinary thing. Which I don't even quite remember why I switched from social studies to social relations, but I took a tutorial there where we read some classical thought about how to understand society. And it was a good seminar. We read good works. I remember Tocqueville in particular. Was Democracy in America really turned me on. And that's where I got the impression that Tocqueville was really a better thinker than Karl Marx, but that's another story too. Anyway, I recognized the program. They wanted somebody that they could plug into their systems to teach that tutorial, and probably to have various students that they work with and as tutors. And they describe what they're looking for. And it's been so many years, I'm not sure if I'll be able to remember. The bottom line is they described me. And I knew that from what I had to go through to be what they described, all the experiences that were the barriers, nobody, I would have bet a small fortune that you couldn't find anybody else in the country who that description would meet as much as me. A newly minted PhD. Okay, well, there are plenty of those who have worked to integrate uh, uh, a variety of social, scientific, humanistic fields, or I don't remember if they use humanistic, but economics, anthropology, psychology, political science. Okay, well, that's what, there it is, back there. That's what I did. It was like putting all the pieces together. When I took my PhD comprehensives, and I was asked, what exactly are we going to examine you on? And I had written up the basic idea briefly, so they knew what the basic. And I said, here are 12 fields that this all draws upon, it weaves together. Examine me on any of that, and 12 fields. This was a program, social studies, for which I had gotten my PhD by putting all those fields together. And in order to get a PhD, not sticking with departmental boundaries and jumping through departmental hoops, I'd had to go through hell in a variety of ways. I couldn't imagine that there could have been any other newly minted PhDs. So I put together an application. I don't remember exactly what the application required, but I worked hard at it. This one I felt like I've got a crack at. I mean, they're going to have to bring me in for an interview. I mean, on paper, how are they going to beat that? But in person, let's check it out and see whether he's somebody we want to have around. Okay. But I'll at least get an interview. And so the months went by. I didn't get the call. Would you come in for an interview? Can you come in on such and such a day? The committee would like to talk with you about your application for this position. No, I didn't get that call. So at this point, I'm thinking, there's stuff going on in this world I just don't understand. I mean, I've got this stuff I'm applying to positions that are, including some that, you could make a case, well, they're beneath me, but they're not even interested in taking a look. There's something different going on when I can't get a single job offer out of 70 applications. And then in addition, what in particular is happening with this Harvard position? Social studies wants somebody like me. They said that's what they wanted. So I make a telephone call to the guy who's the head of the program. I don't know if I should use names or not, but at last I heard, he's pretty old by now. I'm like late 80s or something, but still alive, I think, at the Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton. I've liked his work. I'll give his name. His name is Michael Walzer, and he's done some very respectable work in his life of various kinds. So I reach him, which I was grateful for, and I basically asked the question that I've raised here. Why didn't I get invited for an interview? You said you wanted X, Y, and Z, and how many X, Y's, and Z's did you find out there that were, So he says, here's the punchline if you want to find it, a joke out in it. Well, we weren't looking for somebody who, the ad had said something about who had studied the likes of Marx and Durkheim and Weber and Freud, the big picture social scientists who had attempted to do things that were, sort of like what I was attempting to do. He said, well, we weren't looking for somebody who would do what those guys did. We were looking for a freshly minted PhD in intellectual history whose doctoral dissertation had been in exploring the thought of one of those guys. An intellectual historian, but the ad sounded to me like they wanted an actual integrative intellectual. And you might, if you saw the Yale story, you may recall that the professor there came over and and he says, "Oh, it sounds like you're trying to develop a Weltanschauung, meaning a worldview." And I say, "Yeah, I've got this vision. I want to realize it." And he says, "Well, Emerson was interested. In other words, I could do my doctoral work on Emerson, but they weren't interested in my trying to be what Emerson and other type people that they, so it's all derivative." I didn't get that interview. I'm not a PhD in intellectual history. I mean, I'd studied those guys, but I was trying to put together my own integrative perspective on the meaning of the human story. And I claim that I've actually pulled it off, not just in that book, but adding to it. I'm happy to put my work up against any of those guys that attempted such things in the 19th, early 20th century, or further back. But academia wasn't interested in the thing, but in the study of the thing, derivative. So that leaves the Princeton story where, why is it that I'm not getting anywhere with academia in spite of having the degree items? I've got the PhD anyway. I got, good looking BA and did, etc. So by this time, I had gotten a relationship with the University of California Press. And I had gotten a Ford grant to take the 1,600 pages and boil it down into a more manageable book. So a new version of the thing that I had devoted myself to, the thing I had promised to devote myself to, the new version was in the being considered seriously for publication at the University of California Press. And I'll tell you this. They sent it out for two references. So I do have a relationship with academia through 3 different university presses, but never could get a job. So they sent it out to 2 people. And one of them comes back and says, "This is the greatest thing since sliced bread." And the other one comes back with, "You should not publish this thing." So with like a split decision, you need to have three judges to get to know who won the fight. If the first 2 are split like that, so they sent it out to a 3rd guy. I know who it was. His name was Marvin Bressler. He was the professor, the chairman of the sociology department at Princeton. And he was, basically he was asked, should we publish this book or whatever the set of questions are. I've never been in that position, but anyway, so he wrote back. He was definitely strongly on the best thing since sliced bread. So 2-1, the book survived that process of peer review, as they call it. And years later, I find out he's willing for me to know who he was. So I find out who he was. I mean, I'd seen the comment, and it was, very gratifying. So I knew I had something of a fan. I mean, he wouldn't talk to me like, "Who the hell are you?" Uh, or, I mean, if I were to pose the question at all in the terms that I experience it, which is I feel like I've actually achieved some things that I thought academia cared about. He would not think I was deluded because he had said that I was, that my book was and should be published. So he invited me to have lunch with him at the Princeton faculty place. And it was kind of evocative of memories for me because I've not frequently, but I many times had lunch with my dad in one faculty dining room or another. This is during the period when, being a member of the faculty of a university was like the most wonderful thing, except for being a baseball star, maybe. But like Al Kaline was my big baseball hero. But my father, I think I've been to Johns Hopkins the year he was on sabbatical there, and I've been to the faculty lounge at Michigan State when he was on the faculty there, and always as a kid, looking around at these distinguished people, all grown-ups, and looking smart. So anyway, here I am in the Princeton faculty lounge. First time I'd been in a faculty lounge since I was a kid, and I tell him about my experience and my inability to get anywhere. And I knew that he, recognized that I was a genuine article of some kind and relevant to academia. And I asked him, how am I to understand this? I mean, what does this mean that, I'm a persona non grata in that world that I grew up sort of aiming myself toward? And he explained what the reason was. And he said, well, you're never going to get an entry level position in academia. You're never going to be able to start out on an academic career. Maybe when you're 55, if you've become so prestigious in other ways that they need you more than you need them, and by the way, I haven't, then they will come and they will offer you some kind of an endowed chair. But right now, you would be starting off at the beginning of the thing. And those positions don't get filled in a way that could bring anybody like you on board. I would love, he says, to hire you to be part of my department, but I couldn't do it. I'm not really clear exactly how it would get shot down, but I mean, I don't question his sincerity. He says he couldn't do it, so he probably couldn't do it. But what he said is, somebody advertises for a position. They have an opening. Like if it's in economics, it might be they need a labor economist, a guy who can come in and teach labor economics to maybe a graduate seminar and an undergraduate people, somebody who's qualified to fill that position. It's like they've got an infield and they need somebody to cover between second base and third, and then we need a shortstop with some range. It's covering the territory, and the positions get filled as they're defined, like a baseball team. The shortstop, the left fielder, the guy behind the plate. They're commodities. And you're not a commodity, he said. You don't fit what they're looking for when they define the position to cover third base, first base, Maybe they need a pitcher. But what they don't need is something that doesn't even relate to the baseball field, that they have carved out as their territory to cover in a bureaucratic, institutional kind of a way. So you can stop wasting your time, Andy, in applying for these things. It's not going to happen. So that's my Princeton story. In that case, Harvard sort of betrayed values. The Yale definitely betrayed more than one set of values. And the Princeton story, he's representing Princeton and he's just describing what academia is. And those three stories, involving these three institutions, which are not just any old institutions. These are, I think, all those three, and we can add the others that I've had experience with, Berkeley and University of Chicago. I think almost all of them are in the top greatest universities in the world. So it's not like, like I had actually one interview. Well, never mind that. I'm not going to. It's not as though this was a fourth level sampling, there's major leagues and then there's AAA ball and then there's, all the way down to the farm clubs. I applied for farm club positions and I couldn't get a time at the plate. But, these are all institutions of as great prestige as there is to be found in the world. I mean, the Americans dominate that top 10 list, but you can add Oxford and Cambridge in the UK and Sorbonne, and I don't really know that I've kept up with where the prestige is, but I had experiences of academia at what should have been its finest level. And I got disillusioned. Not the happiest part of my life, but also a snapshot on not the happiest vision of our society. I think that wherever you look in American society, you can tell stories about something having gone wrong at a kind of a fundamental level. I think it's true of corporate America. I hear, at least, I don't have a lot of experience with corporate America. I have some experience of corporate America, but I have reason to believe that there is an unusual degree of corruption and lack of meaning in the corporate world, a lack of integrity. And we sure can see it in our politics. I mean, one of our major parties has just really gone into the dark place. And I don't know if I'm right in making that connection. My experience of the world gives me glimpses of things, but I don't know what all the connections are. But I think it's possible that there is something rotting in America, which is, in addition to all the good stuff that's left, also there's a rot that's kind of pervasive and to be found wherever you look. But in any event, my particular life brought me into serious, meaningful contact with academia over my whole life, which revealed certain things to me, which led to being a process of disillusionment and concern about what this part of the world that once was so noble in my mind has become. Well, thank you for listening to me. Bye-bye.